My hand trembled against the cold wood of the closet door. My heart was pounding against my chest with such force that I was terrified they could hear it from the other side. I was crouched down, my knees protesting against the hard floor, holding my breath as I watched through the narrow slit as Brandon walked into my daughter Jessica's bedroom. It was Christmas Eve, 11:42 at night, exactly. I just wanted to surprise my little girl with her grandmother's pearl necklace, the same one I was keeping in my pocket and was now gripping so tightly the clasp was digging into my palm. My son-in-law closed the door carefully, looking side to side like a thief in his own home, and pulled his cell phone out of his pocket. The light from the screen illuminated his face with a ghostly glow. My 65 years had taught me to read faces, and his at that moment was not that of the charming man I met 3 years ago. It was the face of someone hiding something dark, something rotting from the inside out. He slid his finger across the screen and hit speakerphone. The click echoed in the silence like a gunshot. But before I tell you what I heard that night, what broke my soul and changed me forever, I need you to understand how I ended up in that closet. How a 65-year-old grandmother ended up hiding like a burglar in the house she herself had paid for. Because none of this makes sense without knowing what happened before, without knowing who I was just 12 hours ago, when I still believed my family loved me, when I still thought evil only existed on the news, never within my own blood. That morning, I woke up with an excitement I hadn't felt since my husband died 7 years ago. Christmas had always been our favorite time of year. He would decorate the tree while I prepared dinner. We would sing Christmas carols off-key and laugh until our stomachs hurt. But since he passed, the holidays had become a painful reminder of everything I had lost. This year would be different, I told myself. Jessica had insisted so much that I spend Christmas Eve at her place. "Mom, I don't want you to be alone anymore," she had told me on the phone 3 weeks ago, with that sweet voice that always melted my defenses. "Brandon and I want you to come over. We'll set everything up just how you like it. It'll be special." Special. That word echoed in my head as I got dressed that morning. I chose my ivory dress, the one with the floral embroidery on the collar. I applied my makeup with care, painting my lips that soft shade my husband used to say made me look radiant. I put on the gold earrings Jessica gave me for my last birthday. I wanted to look good for my baby girl. I wanted her to be proud of her mother. What a fool I was. How stupid and blind. I arrived at their place at 4 in the afternoon. A gorgeous condo on the 12th floor of a modern building downtown that, I realize now, they could never have afforded on their salaries. Brandon welcomed me with that perfect smile he practiced in front of the mirror. He hugged me tight, too tight, and called me Mama Margaret with that affectionate tone I now know was pure theater. Come in. Jessica is finishing up in the kitchen. She made your favorite roast turkey recipe." The living room was decorated with a massive tree full of gold lights and red ornaments. There were scented candles that smelled like cinnamon and orange. Christmas music was playing softly from a smart speaker. Everything looked like it was taken straight out of a Hallmark movie. Everything seemed perfect, too perfect. But I didn't want to see the signs. I didn't want to notice how Jessica avoided my gaze while pouring me wine. I didn't want to question why Brandon answered his cell phone every 15 minutes and stepped out onto the balcony to talk in a hushed voice. The three of us had dinner at that expensive mahogany table I had never seen before. We talked about unimportant things. The weather, the news, the neighbors. Jessica asked about my health with an interest that seemed genuine. "Have you had those dizzy spells again, Mom?" I shook my head, not knowing that every word I said was being evaluated, weighed, and filed away to be used against me. "No, sweetie. I feel better than ever. I've been walking every morning. I even started yoga classes with Susan, my neighbor." Brandon and Jessica exchanged a look I couldn't interpret back then. Now I know it was concern. I wasn't supposed to be okay. I was supposed to be weak, confused, showing signs of dementia. But my mind was crystal clear. My body was strong, and that was ruining their plans. After dinner, Jessica excused herself, saying she had to finish wrapping some gifts in her room. Brandon offered to help me wash the dishes. We were in the kitchen for almost an hour, talking about his work at the construction firm, about his plans for the coming year. He told me he wanted to expand the business, open a branch in another city. "But I need capital, Mama Margaret." a lot of capital. The way he said that should have alerted me. But I just nodded, thinking it was casual conversation. At 11 at night, I excused myself to go to the bathroom. I walked down the silent hallway and saw that Jessica's bedroom door was ajar. I heard her voice inside, talking on the phone. Something in her tone stopped me. It was an urgent, nervous whisper. "No, not yet. I have to wait for the right moment. She's very awake, very alert. This is going to be harder than we thought." My maternal instinct went off like an alarm. What was my daughter talking about? Why did she sound so distressed? I moved closer to the door, my heart starting to beat faster. Jessica continued. Yeah, I know. January. Everything has to be ready by January. I can't go on like this. The debts are killing me. Debts. My daughter had debts and had never told me. I, who would have sold everything to help her. I, who would have given her my last cent. Why didn't she tell me? I heard footsteps approaching down the hall. I panicked. I didn't want to be caught spying. I desperately looked for a place to hide and saw the built-in closet right next to the bedroom door. I opened it carefully, squeezed in among the coats that smelled of expensive cologne, and pulled it shut, leaving just a sliver open so I could see. That was when Brandon walked in. When he pulled out his cell phone. When my entire world began to crumble. The voice that came out of the speakerphone was a woman's. Smooth, seductive, familiar. But I couldn't place it just yet. My brain refused to process what was happening. "Hey, baby," the voice said. And those two words were like a bucket of ice water. Brandon smiled. A smile I had never seen on him. Dark, triumphant, evil. "Hey, gorgeous. Are you alone?" The woman laughed. "Yes. And you? Is the old bag still there?" Old bag. She called me an old bag. The air got stuck in my throat. My hands gripped the coats to keep from falling. Brandon looked toward the door, making sure no one was listening, unaware that I was less than 6 feet away. "Yeah, she's still here. But it doesn't matter. In a few weeks, all this will be over." My mind started screaming. What was he talking about? What would be over in a few weeks? The woman on the phone lowered her voice. "Are you sure Jessica isn't going to get cold feet? It's her mother, Brandon. It's still her mother." It was then that my daughter walked into the room. I saw her silhouette appear behind Brandon. He turned around, and she kissed him. A long, conspiratorial kiss. Then she looked at the phone and spoke directly into the speaker. "I'm not going to get cold feet, Ashley. I've made my decision." Ashley, my daughter's best friend, the one who called me Aunt Margaret, the one who hugged me every time she came to visit. And now she was on the other end of the line, planning something terrible with me, with my family, with my life. The 3 people I trusted most in this world were united against me, and I was trapped in that closet, holding back a scream that threatened to tear my throat apart while I listened to them plan my destruction. Brandon put his arm around Jessica. "Tell her," he said. My daughter took a deep breath, and when she spoke, when I heard the words that came out of her mouth, I knew the Margaret one was that morning had died. Mom has 3 properties in her name. The house she lives in, the condo she rents out downtown, and the land she inherited from my dad, plus her savings. We're talking about almost $1 million in total. $1 million. They had calculated my value. They had put a price tag on my life. And now came the worst part. Now came the part that would break me forever. Ashley let out a long whistle on the other end of the line. $1 million. My God. And she doesn't suspect a thing, right? Brandon chuckled, running a hand through his hair with an arrogance that now made me nauseous. Margaret doesn't suspect a thing. She's one of those old-school small-town types who thinks family is sacred. She trusts us blindly. Every word was a burning nail driving through my chest. Small-town type, trusting, stupid. That's what they thought of me. The woman who had welcomed them into my home, who had cooked for them, who had opened my heart believing they were my family. Jessica sat on the bed, right in front of the closet where I was hiding. I could see her profile illuminated by the bedside lamp. My baby girl, my only child, the baby I had protected from all harm, and now she was plotting my demise. "The problem," Jessica said with a tired voice, "is that Mom is very lucid, very active. If we try to get her to sign papers or do a power of attorney, she's going to realize she's not dumb." Brandon walked over to her and massaged her shoulders. "That's why we have to be smarter, babe. That's why we have Dr. Whitman." That name, Whitman, I seared into my memory like a brand. I didn't know who he was yet, but I knew he was part of this. Ashley chimed in from the phone, her voice sounding excited, almost euphoric. "Tell me the whole plan again. I want to make sure there are no mistakes." I felt the walls of the closet closing in on me. The smell of mothballs was making me dizzy. My legs were starting to go numb in that awkward position, but I couldn't move. I couldn't make the slightest sound. I had to listen. I had to know exactly what was waiting for me. Brandon began to speak with the calm of someone who has rehearsed this 1,000 times. "On January 15th, Jessica will take Margaret to Dr. Whitman's office with the excuse of a general checkup. He's a psychiatrist I've had on the payroll for 2 years. We pay him very well for special services." Special services. The words floated in the air like toxic smoke. Jessica nodded, looking at her hands. "I'll tell Mom I'm worried about her health, that lately I've noticed she's forgetful, confused. She's going to deny it, of course, but I'll insist it's just a preventative checkup." The wretched girl already had the script prepared. She had already practiced how to manipulate me, how to deceive me. I wondered how many times they had rehearsed this conversation, how many nights they had spent planning the details of my downfall while I slept peacefully, dreaming of grandchildren I would never have. Brandon continued, pacing the room like a professor giving a lecture. "Whitman will do a fake psychiatric evaluation. He has the forms already prepared. He'll diagnose advanced senile dementia, severe cognitive decline, inability to make decisions. With that diagnosis, we can file for a legal conservatorship." My blood turned to ice. Legal conservatorship. That meant they would strip me of all my rights. They would turn me into a mental invalid, someone with no voice, no vote, no control over her own life. "But a single diagnosis isn't enough," said Ashley. "You need at least 2 more doctors, right? That's what the law says." Hearing her talk about laws, as if this were a normal procedure, made me grit my teeth so hard I felt they might crack. Jessica answered this time. "Brandon already has 2 other doctors lined up. Dr. Sterling, a neurologist who owes him favors, and another psychiatrist from St. Jude's Medical Center. We're paying them $5,000 each to sign the reports. $10,000 in bribes. Money they had probably already siphoned from my own accounts without me knowing." My stomach turned. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burst out of that closet and confront them, but something inside me, something stronger than the pain and the rage, told me to stay still, to listen to everything, that I needed to know the full plan if I wanted to survive. Brandon stopped by the window, looking out at the illuminated city. "Once we have the declaration of incompetence, Jessica will be named Margaret's legal conservator. That will give her full access to all her accounts, properties, and assets. She'll be able to sell, transfer, do whatever she wants. My daughter, my own daughter, would be my jailer." The irony hit me like a fist. I, who had worked 2 jobs to pay for her college. I, who had gone without vacations for years to save up and leave her something when I died. And now she was eager to fast-track my death, to cash in on that inheritance. "And then what?" Ashley asked. "You can't have her living in your house." She'd realized something is wrong. Silence. A long, heavy silence that squeezed my heart. Jessica was the one who spoke, and her voice sounded hollow, as if coming from very far away. "We'll commit her to the Oakwood Haven Psychiatric Facility. It's a private place on the outskirts of the city, very expensive, very discreet. No one asks questions there if you pay well. Psychiatric facility." The words resonated in my head like a death sentence. I had visited one of those places years ago when a distant cousin was committed. The screams, the cold hallways, the smell of disinfectant mixed with hopelessness, the patients walking like zombies, sedated until they lost their humanity. Brandon added with macabre enthusiasm, "Oakwood Haven is perfect. It's 2 hours from here. We can tell the neighbors and acquaintances that Margaret needs specialized care we can't give her at home, that it's for her own good, for my own good." The phrase every monster uses to justify their atrocities. Ashley asked what I already feared hearing. "And how long do you plan to keep her there? Because keeping her in a place like that must cost a fortune." There was another pause. I heard Jessica swallow hard. When she spoke, her voice trembled slightly. Not long. Dr. Whitman says there are ways to accelerate the process. Patients in those places get sick easily. Pneumonia, cardiac arrest, complications with medication. They weren't just planning to lock me up. They were planning to kill me, slowly and silently, in a place where no one would investigate, where my death would seem natural. Just another old woman who couldn't handle the confinement. A statistic. A closed file. My hands shook violently. I had to bite the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood to keep from sobbing. Tears streamed down my cheeks, silent, bitter. I couldn't believe these words were coming out of my daughter's mouth, from the girl who made me love letters on Mother's Day, from the teenager who cried in my arms when her first boyfriend left her. Brandon broke the moment with a cold laugh. 6 months, a year tops, and then we'll be free. Jessica will inherit everything as the only child. We'll split the money 3 ways equally between us. I'll divorce Jessica with a nice settlement. You and I will go live on the coast like we always dreamed, Ashley. And Jessica can pay her debts and start over. So that was the final plan. Brandon would use my daughter to rob me, then he would discard her like trash. And Jessica, my stupid, naive daughter, believed they would actually share the money equally. She didn't see that she was a victim in this trap too. But in that moment, trapped in the darkness of that closet, I felt no pity for her. I only felt a hatred so deep, so visceral, it frightened me. Ashley sighed dreamily on the other end of the line. I can't wait. Imagine, baby. A house by the ocean. No worries. No having to pretend anymore. Jessica stood up abruptly. I have to go back to her. She's been alone for too long. She might start to suspect. Brandon put the phone away after saying goodbye to Ashley with sickly, sweet words that churned my guts. My daughter looked at herself in the mirror and fixed her hair. She pinched her cheeks to give them color. She put on a smile. I watched my daughter transform before my eyes. From cold conspirator to loving daughter in a matter of seconds. That ease to lie, to act, chilled me to the bone. How long had she been pretending? Years? Since she married Brandon? Since before? They left the room together, leaving the door ajar. I heard their footsteps fading down the hall, their cheerful voices calling me. Mom? Where are you? Let's open presents. I stayed in that dark closet, shaking, crying in silence, the pearl necklace still clutched in my hand. I knew I had to get out, that I had to act normal, that I couldn't let them suspect I had heard everything. But I needed a moment more, just a moment for my brain to process the magnitude of the betrayal. My only daughter wanted to commit me to a madhouse. She wanted to rob me. She wanted to kill me. And I had less than 3 weeks to stop it. 3 weeks to survive. 3 weeks to become someone I had never been. I wiped my tears with the sleeve of my dress. I took 3 deep breaths. And when I stepped out of that closet, I was no longer the same Margaret who had entered. That woman had died in there, among the coats and the darkness. The one who came out was someone new. Someone dangerous. I walked toward the living room with steps I didn't recognize as my own. Every muscle in my body was tense, alert, like an animal that has just discovered it is being hunted. But my face was a perfect mask of serenity. Years of raising a daughter alone, of enduring my husband's death, of facing the cruelty of the world had taught me to hide pain. I never imagined I would use that skill against my own blood. Jessica was by the Christmas tree, holding a glass of red wine that sparkled under the golden lights. When she saw me appear, her face lit up with that rehearsed smile I now recognized as pure theater. Mom, there you are. Did you feel sick? We were looking for you. Brandon was sitting on the beige sofa, remote in hand, flipping channels without paying attention. He looked up and smiled at me with that fake warmth that made me nauseous. Mama Margaret, we thought you'd run away. Run away. What an appropriate phrase. If only they knew how much I wanted to run out of that house, out of that city, disappear where they could never find me. But I couldn't. Not yet. I forced a trembling smile and touched my stomach. I think I ate too much turkey. I went to the bathroom and then stood for a moment in the hallway getting fresh air. Jessica put down her glass and approached me with that expression of concern I now knew was completely empty. Are you okay, Mom? Do you want me to get you some water? Or do you want to lie down for a bit? She took my arm gently, guiding me toward the sofa. Her touch burned my skin. I wanted to shove her away, scream at her that I had heard everything, that I knew exactly what kind of viper she was, but I swallowed the words like crushed glass and let myself be guided. "I'm fine, sweetie, just a little tired. You know, age doesn't forgive. Age." I used their own weapon against them. I saw Brandon and Jessica exchange a quick glance, a look loaded with meaning. They surely thought my fatigue was a sign of weakness, that their plans would be easier to execute. Fools. I sat on the sofa and accepted the glass of water Jessica offered. I held it in my hands without drinking. Who knew if they had already started drugging me? If the wine at dinner had contained something more than alcohol? If every gesture of care was actually another step toward my destruction? Paranoia set up shop in my mind like a permanent tenant. Brandon stood up and headed to the tree. "Well, it's almost midnight. How about we open presents?" Jessica clapped with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Yes, Mom. We have something special for you." Something special? I wondered if it would be poison, wrapped in shiny paper. We spent the next hour in a grotesque farce. Them opening gifts, exclaiming with fake joy, hugging me, kissing me responding with the appropriate gestures, smiling when I had to smile, thanking when I had to thank. But inside I was calculating, observing, memorizing every detail. Jessica gave me an olive green wool shawl. "So you don't get cold, Mom. I know your hands are always freezing." How considerate, worrying about my body temperature while planning to put me in a coffin. Brandon gave me a cookbook. "Because nobody cooks like you, Mama Margaret. You're the best, the best. The best fool," they meant. "The best victim." I thanked them with tears in my eyes that they believed were from emotion, but were from pure, contained rage. When it was my turn to give gifts, I took the pearl necklace out of my pocket. The velvet box was a bit crushed from squeezing it so hard in the closet. I handed it to Jessica with trembling hands. "This was your grandmother's. She wanted you to have it when you turned 30. I know that's 2 months away, but I didn't want to wait any longer." My daughter opened the box, and for a second, just a second, I saw something real in her eyes. Guilt? Remorse? Or was I just seeing what I wanted to see? She put on the necklace and looked at herself in the hallway mirror. "It's beautiful, Mom. Thank you." She hugged me, a long hug, and I stood rigid in her arms, wondering how love and hate could coexist in the same heart. Because despite everything, despite what I had heard, a part of me still wanted to believe my daughter could be saved, that Brandon had manipulated her, that she didn't really want to hurt me. But the rational part, the part that had just been born in that dark closet, knew the truth. Jessica had chosen money over her mother, and there was no turning back. At 1 a.m, I faked an exaggerated yawn. "I think I need to go home and rest. It's been a wonderful day, but these old bones can't take so much excitement anymore." Jessica insisted I stay over. "We have the guest room ready." "Mom, it's not safe for you to drive so late." Safe? What irony. The only unsafe thing was staying under her roof for 1 minute longer. "No, sweetie. I prefer my own bed. You know how fussy I am about sleeping." I promised I would drive carefully, that I would text them when I arrived. Brandon insisted on walking me to the car. We went down together in the elevator, in an uncomfortable silence. He whistled a Christmas carol. I clutched my purse as if it were a life preserver. In the underground parking garage, he opened the car door for me like a true gentleman. "Take care, Mama Margaret. We love you very much." He leaned in and kissed my forehead. His lips were cold like a corpse's. I nodded without speaking, because I didn't trust my voice. I started the car and got out of there, with my heart hammering in my ears. I drove the 15 blocks to my house without remembering how. My body functioned on autopilot, while my mind was a whirlwind of violent thoughts. When I arrived at my house, that little 2-story place with the front garden that had been my refuge for 30 years, I sat in the car for 10 full minutes, just breathing, just trying not to fall apart. Finally, I went in. I deadbolted the door, something I rarely did. I walked straight to my bedroom without turning on the lights. I sat on the bed, and that was when the dam broke. I cried like I hadn't cried since my husband's funeral. I cried for the daughter I thought I had and who never existed. I cried for the life I thought I would have, and that was being stolen from me. I cried for the naive old woman I had been until that night. But after an hour of sobbing that left me breathless and with a throbbing headache, I got up. I washed my face with cold water. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, puffy eyes, runny mascara, wrinkles deepening under the cruel light. But I also saw something else. I saw determination. I saw rage. I saw a woman who wasn't going to let herself be killed without a fight. "You want to play dirty?" I told my reflection. "Then let's play." I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a pen, writing down everything I had heard, every name, every detail, every date. Dr. Whitman. January 15th. Oakwood Haven, Dr. Sterling. $5,000 per signature. Legal conservatorship. I needed evidence. I needed proof. Because my word against theirs would be useless. I was the senile old lady they were about to diagnose. They were the concerned family. At 6 in the morning on Christmas Day, when the sun was just starting to paint the sky orange, I made a decision. I was going to pretend. I was going to make them believe everything was still normal, that I knew nothing. And while they wove their web to trap me, I would weave mine. Tighter. Deadlier. I grabbed my phone and searched the internet. Oakwood Haven Psychiatric Facility. A website appeared with photos that looked like a luxury hotel. Green gardens, spacious rooms, smiling staff, but the comments on medical forums told a different story. Allegations of abuse, patients over-sedated, suspicious deaths that were never investigated, families paying to get rid of inconvenient relatives. I felt bile rising in my throat. This was the place where they wanted to lock me up. This was the place where they planned for me to die. I also searched for Dr. Whitman. I found his office in an expensive part of the city, psychiatry and neurology. Hundreds of positive reviews that were probably fake. A photo of him on the website. White coat, professional smile. I burned his face into my memory. Then I looked for the other doctors they had mentioned. Dr. Sterling worked at a private clinic, specialist in neurodegenerative diseases, perfect for signing a dementia diagnosis. The third doctor from Street, Jude's hospital, was harder to identify without a full name, but I knew I would find him. I spent all of Christmas morning investigating, taking notes, building my strategy. At 10 o'clock my phone rang. It was Jessica. "Hi, Mom. Did you get home okay last night?" I was worried. What a great actress. She should have gone into movies. "Yes, sweetie. I slept like a baby. It was a beautiful night. Thank you for everything." Lie after lie, building my own mask. "I love you, Mom." Another dagger. Another poison. "I love you too, daughter." And the worst part was that it was still true. Despite everything, a broken part of me still loved her, and that made everything infinitely more painful. The following days were a nightmare of constant acting. Every time Jessica called, I answered with feigned joy. Every time she came to visit, I served her coffee and cookies as if nothing had changed. But inside, every cell of my body vibrated with tension. It was like walking barefoot on broken glass, knowing one false step would give away that I knew everything. On December 28th, Jessica showed up at my house unannounced. She brought a bag of pastries and that rehearsed smile that now gave me chills. "Mom, I was in the neighborhood and wanted to see you. How have you been?" She hugged me and I returned the hug, while my mind screamed to push her away. We sat in the living room. She talked about trivial things, the weather, a sale at the supermarket, a TV show. I nodded, smiled, commented, but I was observing, analyzing every gesture, every look, searching for signs of what was coming. Then she dropped the bomb with a casualness so perfect I knew she had rehearsed it. "Mom, I've been thinking. You haven't been to the doctor in a long time. When was your last general checkup?" My heart skipped a beat. Here it came. The beginning of the plan. I took a sip of tea to buy time. "A few months ago, I think. You know I hate hospitals." Jessica leaned forward, taking my hand with that fake tenderness that churned my stomach. "That's precisely why I worry. At our age, well, at your age, it's important to do regular checkups. Better safe than sorry. At your age." As if I were a decrepit ancient woman. I was 65, not 90. I gripped my cup tighter. "I'm fine, daughter. I feel perfectly healthy." She sighed, letting go of my hand. "Mom, I don't want to scare you, but lately I've noticed you're a little forgetful. The other day you told me the same story twice, and on Christmas Eve, you took a long time in the bathroom. Brandon and I got worried. Liar, calculator. She was planting the seeds of doubt, constructing the narrative of my supposed dementia. I forced a nervous laugh. Oh, honey, everyone repeats stories sometimes. That doesn't mean anything. Jessica shook her head slowly, with that expression of a concerned daughter she surely practiced in the mirror. I know you think I'm exaggerating, but it would make me feel so much better if you went for a checkup, just to rule things out. I have an acquaintance, a very good doctor. I could get you an appointment. A very good doctor. Surely Dr. Whitman, my designated executioner. I needed to reject it without raising suspicion. Is it expensive? You know I don't like spending on nonsense. Jessica smiled, thinking she had found my weak point. Don't worry about that. Brandon and I will pay for it. It's our late Christmas gift. Of course, they would gladly pay for the doctor who would sign my death warrant. I pretended to consider it, biting my lip like I did when I was undecided. Well, if you insist. But I don't want to go alone. Doctors make me nervous. Jessica's eyes shone with barely contained triumph. Of course I'll go with you. Mom, how does January 15th sound? That way we have time to enjoy the rest of the holidays. January 15th. Exactly the date they had mentioned on that call. Everything was going according to their plan. Sounds fine, I said with a soft, trusting voice. Inside, my mind was already 3 steps ahead. Jessica left half an hour later, satisfied that she had accomplished her mission. I closed the door and leaned against it, breathing deeply. I had 2.5 weeks. 2 weeks to build my defense. That same afternoon, I called Susan, my neighbor. We were almost the same age and had developed a solid friendship over the last few years. She was a widow like me, but without children. Direct, intelligent, with a common sense I desperately needed. She came to my house in 5 minutes. When I opened the door, she must have seen something in my face because her expression changed immediately. Margaret, what happened? You look terrible. I ushered her in, and we sat in the kitchen. I served her coffee while deciding how much to tell her. Finally, I let it all out. Every word I had heard in that closet. Every detail of the plan to rob me and kill me. Susan listened in silence, her face going from shock to fury. When I finished, she slammed her palm on the table. That bitch. Your own daughter. I can't believe it. I couldn't either. But here we were. I need help, Susan. I don't know what to do. If I go to the police without proof, they'll think I'm crazy, and that would only give them more ammunition to declare me insane. Susan sat thoughtfully, tapping her fingers against the cup. You need concrete evidence. Recordings, documents, something that proves their conspiracy. Exactly what I had thought. But how? I can't go into her house to look for papers, and I don't know how to record phone calls. Susan pulled out her cell phone. My nephew works in tech. He can get us apps to record calls, tiny microphones you can hide. In this day and age, technology is our best weapon. We spent the next hour planning. Susan would be my accomplice, my silent witness. She would help me gather evidence, without Jessica and Brandon suspecting a thing. The next day, Susan's nephew came to my house. Tyler was his name. Ironically, a nice young man of 30 with thick glasses and infinite patience for explaining technology to an old lady. He taught me how to use an app on my phone that recorded calls automatically. He gave me a small device that looked like a pen, but was actually a voice recorder. He showed me how to hide my phone in my purse to record conversations without anyone noticing. Mrs. Margaret, he told me before leaving, be very careful. If they discover you're recording them, they could accelerate their plans. I knew. I was playing a very dangerous game, but I had no choice. On January 2nd, Jessica called to confirm the appointment with Dr. Whitman. It's at 10 a.m. on the 15th. Mom, I'll pick you up at 9. I activated the recording app. Perfect. Honey, what's the doctor's name? Whitman. Dr. George Whitman. He's very prestigious. He has his office in the business district. The call lasted 5 more minutes. We talked about nonsense while my phone recorded every word. When I hung up, I saved the file with the date and time. It was my first piece of evidence. But it wasn't enough. I needed more. Much more. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling, thinking about my late husband. What would he tell me if he were alive? What would he do in my place? He was always a man of action, someone who faced problems head-on. But he was also cunning, strategic. He would have told me to use my supposed weakness as a strength, that they saw me as a stupid old woman, and that was precisely my advantage. I could act even more confused, make them believe their plan was working better than expected. Meanwhile, I would be gathering evidence, building my case, preparing my counterattack. I decided I also needed a lawyer, someone who could advise me legally without alerting Jessica. I remembered Mr. Thompson, the lawyer who handled my husband's will. He was an older man, discreet, with an impeccable reputation. I called him the next day from Susan's phone, just in case Jessica was monitoring my calls. Mr. Thompson agreed to see me that same afternoon in his downtown office. I told him everything, every detail. At first, he seemed skeptical, but when I showed him my notebook with notes and played the recording of the call with Jessica, his expression hardened. Mrs. Margaret, this is very serious. What they are planning is fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. But you're right, we need stronger evidence before going to the authorities. He pulled out a folder and started taking notes. First, we need to protect your assets. Does Jessica have any power of attorney over your accounts? I shook my head. Only emergency access to a small savings account. The properties are solely in my name. Mr. Thompson nodded. Good. We're going to make some legal changes. We'll transfer the properties into a trust, where you are the sole beneficiary while you live. That way, even if they declare you incompetent, they won't be able to sell anything without breaking the trust, which would require a complex court order. He explained that we would also create a new will, leaving everything to a charitable foundation, with Jessica receiving only a minimal amount. We would do this in secret. And if they tried to use the fake dementia diagnosis, he would testify that days prior, I was completely lucid, making complex legal decisions. It was perfect. It was exactly the kind of protection I needed. We spent 3 hours in Mr. Thompson's office signing documents, establishing the trust, shielding my wealth from the claws of my own daughter. Every signature was an act of silent war. Every sealed paper was a trap Jessica didn't know existed yet. When I walked out of there, the sun was already setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. I felt strangely powerful. For the first time since that cursed Christmas Eve, I felt I had some control. Mr. Thompson walked me to my car. Before I got in, he took my arm gently. Mrs. Margaret, what comes next will be difficult. You will have to act in front of your daughter as if nothing has changed. Are you prepared for that? I looked him in the eye. I've been doing it for a week already. I can keep going until the time is right. He nodded approvingly. Keep me informed of everything. Any suspicious call, any strange visit. And above all, do not go alone to that appointment on January 15th. I didn't plan to go alone. Susan had already insisted on accompanying me, hiding in the waiting room with her own phone, ready to record anything. The following days passed in a tense routine. Jessica called me every 2 days, always asking how I felt, if I had had any lapses, if I felt confused. I played along. I started acting slightly disoriented in our conversations. I pretended to forget small things. I asked her twice about the same topic. I left sentences incomplete, all calculated to make them believe my mind was deteriorating naturally, facilitating their plan. What they didn't know was that every conversation was being recorded, every lie of hers, documented. On January 8th, Brandon came to visit me alone. That surprised me and put me immediately on guard. He never came without Jessica. He arrived with a box of expensive chocolates and that salesman's smile I disliked so much. Mama Margaret, Jessica has a terrible headache, so I came to bring you these chocolates you like. Headache? Sure. I let him in, but left my purse open on the living room table, with the phone recording. We sat down and Brandon started talking about his work, about the weather, about nonsense. But I noticed he was nervous. His hands wouldn't stop moving. His gaze scanned the room as if evaluating it. Suddenly, he changed the subject. Mama Margaret, have you ever thought about what would happen if you were to get sick? If you needed special care? There it was, the conversation he really came to have. I feigned confusion. Sick? I'm fine, Brandon. He leaned forward, using that condescending tone people use with children and the elderly. Yes, of course, you're fine now. But at this age, things can change fast. Have you thought of a place where they could care for you professionally if it were necessary? A place. Like Oakwood Haven. He was testing the waters, preparing me psychologically for what was coming. I haven't thought about that, I lied, playing naive. Why do you ask? Brandon shrugged with fake nonchalance. For nothing specific. Just that Jessica and I have been researching options. There are very good places, very comfortable, like 5-star hotels, but with medical attention. Just in case. As if fate were uncertain, and not something they themselves were orchestrating. How considerate of you, I said with a trembling voice. But I hope to never need that. This house is my home. I saw a flash of impatience cross his face before he covered it again with his mask of kindness. Of course, Mom. We just wanted you to know that if something happens, you won't be alone. We'll take care of you. Take care of me. To death. Brandon stayed half an hour more, talking in circles, always returning to the topic of my health, my age, the risks. When he finally left, I closed the door and leaned against it, shaking. I ran to check the recording on my phone. It was perfect. Every word, every insinuation, every seed of manipulation was recorded. I sent it immediately to Mr. Thompson via encrypted email that Susan's nephew had set up for me. That night, Jessica called. Mom, Brandon told me he stopped by to see you. How was the visit? I activated the recording. Good, daughter. He brought chocolates. Although I thought it was strange, he came alone. Are you okay? He said you had a headache. There was a brief pause. Yeah. It was just a migraine. I'm better now. What did you guys talk about? She wanted to know what Brandon had said. They wanted to make sure their stories matched. Nothing important. About his work. He asked me about my health. I heard relief in her voice. Oh, good. It's just that we worry so much about you, Mom. Liar. On January 10th, 3 days before the appointment with Dr. Whitman, I decided to do something risky. I needed to see the office, know the terrain. I asked Susan to accompany me. We drove to the business district where it was located. A modern glass and steel building. Suite 304, 3rd floor. We didn't go up. We just watched from the car. I saw several people entering and leaving. They all looked normal. Professionals in suits going to their medical appointments. Nothing suggested this place was the epicenter of a fraud. Susan took photos of the building, the entrance, the sign with the doctor's name. Location evidence, she said, just in case. While we were there, I saw something that froze my blood. Jessica, leaving the building. With her was a man of about 50, graying hair, white coat under a black overcoat. Dr. Whitman, I assumed. They were talking animatedly. Jessica handed him an envelope. He took it without opening it, tucked it into the inside pocket of his coat, and patted her on the shoulder. Susan pulled out her phone and recorded the entire scene. We just witnessed the payoff, she whispered. That is real evidence, Margaret. My heart beat so fast I thought it would burst out of my chest. Seeing my daughter in person, handing money to the doctor who would falsify my diagnosis, made everything terribly real. It wasn't just words overheard in a closet anymore. It was conspiracy in action. Jessica and the doctor said goodbye. She walked toward her car without noticing we were half a block away. I started the car quickly and we left before she could see us. On the way back home, Susan and I analyzed the video. You could clearly see the envelope handoff. Although we couldn't prove it contained money, the context was obviously suspicious. This is gold, Susan said. Along with the audio recordings, you have a solid case. But I wanted more. I wanted to catch them completely, with no possibility of escape. That night, I made a decision that terrified me, but I knew was necessary. I would go to the appointment on January 15th. I would let Dr. Whitman do his fake evaluation. I would let them believe their plan was working. And meanwhile, I would record everything. On January 14th, the eve of the appointment, Jessica came to dinner at my house. We cooked together, like we did when she was a child. As I chopped vegetables, I observed her, feeling a mix of love and hate so intense it made me dizzy. How could my heart contain both things at the same time? During dinner, I acted more confused than ever. I forgot where I had put the salt. I asked 3 times what day it was tomorrow. I stared blankly in the middle of a sentence. I saw how Jessica's eyes shone with every mistake of mine. She was delighted. She thought my mind was truly deteriorating. When she left, she hugged me tight. "I love you, Mom. Tomorrow everything is going to be okay." Everything was going to be okay. For her, maybe. She didn't know tomorrow would be the beginning of her end. I stayed awake all night, reviewing my plan. Mr. Thompson would be aware of everything. Susan would accompany me as my concerned friend. I would carry the pen recorder in my pocket, my cell phone in my purse. Recording. I would capture every word from Dr. Whitman, every lie, every fake diagnosis. And when I had enough evidence, when the weight of their crimes was undeniable, I would destroy them. All of them. At 5 a.m. on January 15th, I got up, I showered. I dressed in a soft cream-colored sweater and dark pants. I put on light makeup. I ate breakfast even though I wasn't hungry. I checked that all my recording devices were working. Susan arrived at 8:30. She took my hands and looked me in the eye. "Are you sure about this? We can still cancel. Go straight to the police with what we have." I shook my head. "It's not enough. I need them to incriminate themselves completely. I need recordings of the doctor lying, diagnosing something I don't have. Without that, they could say it was all a misunderstanding." Susan nodded. "Then let's catch those bastards." At 9 o'clock sharp, Jessica knocked on my door. She was wearing an elegant gray dress and a radiant smile. "Ready, Mom?" More than ever. Dr. Whitman's office smelled of disinfectant and lies. The walls were a blinding white, decorated with framed diplomas that were probably as fake as his professional ethics. The receptionist, a young woman with a mechanical smile, showed us into a waiting room where there were old magazines and an artificial plant covered in dust. Susan stayed there, sitting strategically where she could see the office door. She had her phone in hand, pretending to read news, but she actually had the camera ready. Jessica took my arm as if I were an invalid. "You're nervous, Mom." I nodded, letting my hand tremble slightly. It wasn't completely acting. I was terrified, but not for the reasons she thought. At 10:05, the door opened and he appeared. Dr. George Whitman, 50-something, perfectly styled graying hair, designer glasses, expensive suit under the white coat, professional smile, and dead eyes. "Mrs. Margaret, what a pleasure to meet you. Come in, please." His voice was smooth, practiced, the voice of someone used to deceiving. I looked at Jessica. She nodded. "Do you want me to come in with you, Mom?" Dr. Whitman intervened before I could answer. "I prefer to do the evaluation alone with the patient, if you don't mind. It is standard protocol for this type of assessment." Jessica squeezed my hand. "I'll be right out here. Anything you need, you call me." I entered the office. The doctor closed the door behind me with a soft click that sounded like a trap snapping shut. My purse hung from my shoulder, the phone recording every second. The pen recorder was in my sweater pocket. "Sit down, please," he said, pointing to a leather chair in front of his desk. I sat down, keeping my posture slightly hunched, my expression confused. He settled into his executive chair and opened a folder that already had my name on it. Curious, a folder with my name before I even arrived. "All right, Mrs. Margaret. Your daughter mentioned she's been worried about certain symptoms you've been presenting. Can you tell me a little about that?" I pretended to think with difficulty. "I don't know. Sometimes I forget things. Everyone forgets things." "No." He wrote something in his notebook. "What kind of things do you forget? Names? Dates? Where you left items?" I responded with deliberate vagueness, mixing normal lapses with feigned confusion. He kept writing, nodding with that expression of fake concern. After 10 minutes of basic questions, he pulled out some printed sheets. "I'm going to do a standard cognitive evaluation. They are simple questions. Don't worry if you can't answer them all." He began the test, asking about the current date, the location we were in, simple math operations, short-term memory. I knew these tests. I had researched them after hearing the conversation on Christmas Eve. I knew exactly which answers would yield a low score without seeming completely faked. I failed deliberately on some. "What day is it today?" he asked. Tuesday? No. Wait, Wednesday. It was Friday. "What month are we in? January or February?" "January." "If I have $100 and spend 30, how much do I have left?" 50, 70. I saw his eyes shine with every mistake. He was delighted. The fake diagnosis would be easier to justify if I demonstrated confusion myself. But then he did something that surprised me. He got up and went to a cabinet. He took out a bottle of pills. "Mrs. Margaret, I'm going to prescribe something that will help you with these symptoms. They are special vitamins for memory." "Vitamins?" "Sure." He handed me the bottle. I took it with trembling hands and put it in my purse. Physical evidence. I would have it analyzed later. "Take one every night before sleeping. You'll see improvement in a few weeks." Liar. They were probably sedatives to make me seem more confused, to accelerate my supposed deterioration. He returned to his desk and began typing on his computer. I could see the screen from my angle. He was filling out a psychiatric evaluation form. In the diagnosis section, I saw the words that made me grit my teeth. Moderate to severe senile dementia, progressive cognitive decline, compromised judgment capacity, guardianship, conservatorship evaluation recommended. There it was. The written sentence. The words that would turn me into a legal incompetent. The words that would give Jessica total control over my life. The doctor printed the document and signed it with an elaborate flourish. Then he took out his official stamp and stamped the corner. "Done," he said with satisfaction. "I will give a copy of this to your daughter. She will know what to do with the information." What to do? How to seek the legal conservatorship? How to prepare me for the asylum? How to start robbing me? I stood up, feigning weakness in my legs. "I'm very bad, doctor?" He came around the desk and put a hand on my shoulder. The gesture was supposed to be paternal, but it felt like the claws of a vulture. "Don't worry. With the proper care, you will be fine. Your daughter is very responsible. She will make sure you receive the attention you need." Proper care, attention, euphemisms for imprisonment and death. We left the office. Jessica stood up immediately, searching my face and the doctor's for signs of how it went. Dr. Whitman gave her a discreet nod. Message received. Everything went according to plan. "Can we speak for a moment, Jessica?" he told her. He didn't use a title for her, treating her like a co-conspirator. "Of course." "Mom, wait for me here with your friend." I sat next to Susan, who immediately took my hand and whispered, "Did you record everything?" I nodded almost imperceptibly. Jessica and Dr. Whitman went into his office. The door closed, but not completely. A small crack remained. Susan got up with her phone, pretending to look for something in her purse, and got close enough to record audio. We managed to hear fragments of the conversation. "Diagnosis is complete. Severe dementia. You can proceed with the conservatorship. The other doctors? When can they sign?" "Dr. Sterling tomorrow. The third one next week. $3,000 each. Money changing hands. Conspirators confirming their crimes." Susan recorded everything she could before the door opened completely. Jessica came out with a manila folder in her hands and an expression that tried to be sad, but couldn't hide the triumph in her eyes. "Mom, the doctor says you need specialized help. It's nothing grave, but we have to take measures." I nodded with real tears in my eyes, not from sadness, but from rage. "What does that mean, daughter?" She put her arm around me. "It means I'm going to take better care of you. That we're going to make sure you're okay." Back in the car, Jessica drove in silence. I looked out the window, pretending to be lost in thought. She thought I was scared, confused by the diagnosis. She didn't know I was calculating my next move. When we arrived at my house, Jessica walked me to the door. "Mom, in the next few days we'll have to go see other specialists, just to confirm what Dr. Whitman found. It's normal procedure. More corrupt doctors, more fake signatures. Building the legal case against me. Okay, daughter. I'll do whatever is necessary." She kissed my forehead. "You're so brave. Mom, everything is going to be fine." When she left, I went into my house and collapsed on the sofa. I pulled out the phone and checked the recording. Perfect. Every word from Dr. Whitman had been registered. His fraudulent evaluation, his fake diagnosis, his suspicious prescription. I called Mr. Thompson immediately and sent him the files. "Excellent work," he said. "Now we have Dr. Whitman trapped, but we need more. We need direct evidence that Jessica and Brandon are orchestrating the whole thing." The following days were a perfect choreography of deception. Jessica took me to Dr. Sterling on January 16th. Another elegant office, another doctor with a bought smile. I repeated my performance of confusion and forgetfulness. He asked the same questions as Dr. Whitman, wrote the same fake diagnosis, collected his share of the bribe. I recorded it all. On January 20th, it was the third doctor's turn, a psychiatrist from St. Jude's Hospital named Dr. Harris. He was younger, more nervous. He sweated while asking me questions. When Jessica handed him the envelope with money in the hallway, thinking I was in the bathroom, his hands shook so much he almost dropped it. Coward. All of them were cowards selling their degrees for a few dollars. By January 22nd, Jessica had the 3 diagnoses she needed. That night she came to my house with Brandon. They brought a bottle of expensive wine and Thai food. "Mom, we need to talk about your situation," Jessica began, while pouring the wine. I was sitting in my favorite chair, with the pen recorder in the pocket of my robe. Brandon cleared his throat. "Mama Margaret, the doctors were very clear. Your condition is going to worsen. You need care that we can't give you at home." Here it came. The asylum. The cage where they planned to lock me. I feigned confusion. "Care? But I'm fine here. This is my house." Jessica knelt in front of me, taking my hands. What a great actress. She deserved an award. "I know, Mom, but there are specialized places where they can help you better. Beautiful places, with gardens and nurses 24 hours a day. Beautiful. Like Oakwood Haven, that hell disguised as paradise." "I don't want to leave my house," I said with a trembling voice, and that part wasn't acting. Even though I knew I wouldn't end up there, the mere idea terrified me. Brandon intervened with his condescending tone. "Mom, we understand it's difficult, but it's for your own good. We already did some visits to different places. We found a perfect one. It's called Oakwood Haven." Oakwood Haven. Finally, they said it out loud. I was recording it all. Jessica pulled a brochure out of her purse. Glossy photos of bright rooms, smiling elderly people, green gardens, propaganda. "Look how pretty it is, Mom. It has everything: recreational activities, nutritious meals, permanent medical attention." What the brochure didn't show were the over-sedated patients, the rooms with locks on the outside, the nightly screams no one listened to. "When would I have to go?" I asked with a small voice. Jessica and Brandon exchanged a look. "Soon, Mom. Very soon. First, we have to do some legal paperwork." "Legal paperwork." "The conservatorship." Brandon poured himself more wine. "You see, Mama Margaret, when someone has cognitive problems like you, the law requires a family member to be named legal guardian, someone who can make medical and financial decisions for you." My stomach twisted. Here came the part where they would take everything from me. "Jessica will be your conservator," Brandon continued. "That way she can ensure you receive the best possible care. She'll be able to manage your accounts, pay your medical expenses, all that." Manage my accounts. What an elegant way to say, rob me. Jessica squeezed my hands. "Don't worry about anything, Mom. I'll take care of everything. The house, the payments, your properties. Everything will be safe. Safe in her dirty hands." What they didn't know was that Mr. Thompson had already moved everything. The properties were protected in the trust. The main accounts had been transferred. The only thing Jessica would find would be an account with barely $10,000, enough not to raise suspicion, but not enough to satisfy her greed. "And my house?" I asked. "What will happen to it?" Uncomfortable silence. Finally, Brandon spoke. "Well, maintaining an empty house is expensive, Mom. Maybe it's best to sell it and use that money for your care at Oakwood Haven." "Sell it." "My house. The house where I raised my daughter, where I mourned my husband's death, where I lived 40 years of memories." They wanted to sell it and split the money. The tears that ran down my cheeks were absolutely real. "No, I don't want you to sell my house." Jessica hugged me, rubbing my back. "Shh. Mom, don't think about that now. We'll see what to do. The important thing is that you are well taken care of." Liar. It was all a lie. That night, they stayed late, talking about their plans for me as if I were a piece of furniture that needed moving. They drank wine, ate, laughed. I barely touched the food. I didn't trust anything that came from their hands. When they finally left, I reviewed the recordings. Every incriminating word had been registered. The admission that they wanted to control my finances, the mention of selling my house, everything. I sent the files to Mr. Thompson along with a message. "It's almost time," he replied. "Patience. We need them to take one more step, to file the conservatorship papers, then we have them completely." On January 25th, Jessica arrived with documents. "Mom, I need you to sign these papers. They are just formalities for the facility." I looked at them. I recognized some legal terms. Authorization of guardianship, transfer of powers. Basically, signing my own sentence. "I don't understand very well what they say," I lied. Jessica sighed with barely controlled impatience. "Just say you agree that I be your guardian, that you trust me to take care of you." Trust her. What a cruel joke. I took the pen she offered. My hand trembled over the paper. For a moment, just a moment, I saw a flash of doubt in Jessica's eyes, as if a part of her, buried deep down, felt guilt, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Mom, you're going to sign." I looked her in the eyes. My baby girl. My monster. "Jessica, do you love me?" The question took her by surprise. "Of course I love you, Mom." "Why do you ask that?" "Because I needed to hear the lie one more time, because I needed to confirm there was no salvation for her." "For nothing, daughter. I just wanted to hear it." I signed the papers with a name Mr. Thompson had told me to use. A signature slightly different from my real legal signature. Close enough to pass casual inspection, but different in key strokes. Legally invalid. Jessica took the documents with a victorious smile. "Thank you, Mom. You'll see everything will turn out fine." She left quickly, anxious to file the papers, to take the next step in my destruction. But what she didn't know was that she had just signed her own downfall. I called Mr. Thompson. She did it. She filed the conservatorship papers with fake medical documents and a signature that isn't legally valid. "Perfect," he replied. "Now we wait for her to present them to the judge. Once the legal process is in motion, we will have proof of fraud before a judicial authority. Then we intervene." On January 28th, I received a court summons. Conservatorship hearing scheduled for February 5th. Jessica called me that night, pretending sadness. "Mom." A letter arrived from the court. "It's just a formality. The judge wants to see you to confirm you agree with everything." A formality. As if deciding my fate were a trivial errand. "Will you be there?" I asked. "Of course. Me and my lawyer." "Don't worry about anything." Her lawyer. Another accomplice in the conspiracy. I spent the next few days preparing. Mr. Thompson rehearsed with me what to say, how to act. We went over every recording, every document. We had overwhelming evidence. Bribes to doctors, fake diagnoses, conspiracy to commit fraud, intent of illegal confinement. And if we could get someone from Oakwood Haven to testify about their practices, we could add attempted murder. The night of February 4th, I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow would be the day. Tomorrow I would face my daughter in court. Tomorrow I would reveal everything. I sat on my bed, looking at old photos. Jessica as a baby. Jessica at her graduation. Jessica on her wedding day. Somewhere along the way, I lost that girl. Or maybe she never really existed. Maybe she was always this greedy and cruel person, and I was too blinded by love to see it. February 5th dawned gray and cold. I dressed with care, choosing a beige suit that made me look respectable, but not too elegant. I needed to look like a vulnerable elderly woman, not a strategist. Mr. Thompson picked me up at 8 in the morning. In the car, we went over the plan one last time. "When it's your turn to speak, stay calm. Answer the questions with clarity and coherence. Demonstrate that you are completely lucid." I nodded, clutching my purse where I carried copies of all the evidence. The courthouse was an old building with hallways that smelled of old paper and life-changing decisions. Courtroom 3, second floor. When we entered, Jessica was already there, sitting next to a man in a dark suit who must have been her lawyer. When she saw me, she stood up with that fake smile I now recognized so well. "Mom, here you are. How do you feel?" Like someone about to destroy her own daughter. "Nervous," I said honestly. Brandon arrived minutes later. He greeted me with a kiss on the cheek that made me shudder. He sat behind Jessica, his hand on her shoulder, united until the end. How sweet. The judge entered. A man of about 60, white hair, Serious expression. Judge Morrison. According to the nameplate on his desk. All right, we are here for the conservatorship hearing of Mrs. Margaret Mendez. All parties are present. Jessica's lawyer stood up. Yes, Your Honor. Attorney Carrillo, representing the petitioner Jessica Sandoval, daughter of the alleged incapacitated person. Alleged incapacitated person. That's what they called me now. Mr. Thompson stood up. Attorney Orlando Thompson, representing Mrs. Margaret Mendez. We are here to oppose this petition for conservatorship. I saw Jessica tense up. She looked at Brandon with confusion. This wasn't in their plan. I was supposed to arrive alone, confused, easy to manipulate. Judge Morrison raised an eyebrow. Oppose? I understand Mrs. Margaret signed documents accepting the guardianship. Mr. Thompson pulled out a folder. That signature is invalid, Your Honor. It was obtained through deceit. Furthermore, we have substantial evidence that this petition for conservatorship is part of an elaborate fraud to misappropriate my client's assets. The silence in the room was absolute. Jessica went pale. Attorney Carrillo looked bewildered. Brandon had gone motionless. His eyes locked on me. The judge leaned forward. Those are very serious accusations, Mr. Thompson. I hope you have proof to substantiate them. Mr. Thompson smiled. I have abundant proof, Your Honor. Audio recordings, videos, documents, testimonies, all duly authenticated. He spent the next hour presenting the evidence. First, the recordings of the call between Brandon and Ashley on Christmas Eve. The room was in shock when they heard the conspiracy revealed in their own words. Jessica shook her head, whispering no, 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 while Brandon's voice described the plan to commit me and kill me. Then came the recordings of Brandon's visits to my house, talking about asylums and special care. His manipulative tone was exposed before the judge. After that, the recordings of my appointment with Dr. Whitman. Every word of the fake diagnosis. The judge listened with an increasingly severe expression. Mr. Thompson presented the video of Jessica handing the envelope to Dr. Whitman outside his office. Evidence of bribery to a medical professional to obtain a fraudulent diagnosis, Mr. Thompson explained. Attorney Carrillo tried to object. Your Honor, those recordings could be edited, taken out of context. Mr. Thompson was prepared. We have the original files with metadata confirming date, time, and location. In addition, we have eyewitnesses. Susan was called to testify. She told how she had accompanied me, how she had seen the transaction, how she had recorded the conversations. Her testimony was clear, coherent, devastating. Jessica was crying now. Tears that could have been of regret or rage at being discovered. I didn't care to distinguish. The judge called for a recess. When we returned, his expression was iron. I have reviewed the evidence presented. It is deeply disturbing. Attorney Carrillo, does your client have anything to say in her defense? Jessica's lawyer looked defeated. He whispered something to my daughter. She shook her head, unable to speak. Brandon had stood up, trying to leave the courtroom discreetly. Officer, detain that man, the judge ordered. A bailiff blocked the door. Brandon was trapped, panic visible on his face. Judge Morrison continued. Based on the evidence presented, I not only deny the petition for conservatorship, but I order a full criminal investigation. There are clear indications of conspiracy to commit fraud, bribery, forgery of medical documents, and attempted illegal confinement. He looked at Jessica sternly. Mrs. Sandoval, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. The words read to criminals. My daughter was officially a criminal. Mr. Thompson hadn't finished. Your Honor, there is more. We have information that the plan included confining Mrs. Margaret in the Oakwood Haven psychiatric facility, where, through intentional medical negligence, they planned to cause her death. The judge closed his eyes for a moment, as if the weight of human evil were too much. That would constitute conspiracy to commit murder. Officer, ensure that none of the involved parties leave the jurisdiction. I order an immediate investigation of Drs. Whitman, Sterling, and Harris for medical fraud and bribery. Also of Oakwood Haven for possible health regulation violations. 3 bangs of the gavel. Session adjourned. Criminal charges will proceed. Jessica finally found her voice. She stood up, shaking. Mom, I turned to look at her. My daughter. The girl I had loved more than my life. And I felt nothing. The love had burned down to cold ashes. Don't call me Mom. You lost that right when you decided to sell me for money. Her tears intensified. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Brandon pressured me. I had debts. I was desperate. Brandon interrupted her with fury. Shut up, you idiot. You were more than happy with the plan. You suggested the damn asylum. And there it was. The truth coming out when the rats turned on each other. Jessica looked at him with horror. You said we were just going to put her in a safe place? That nothing bad would happen to her. He laughed bitterly. And you believe me? God, you're dumber than I thought. Of course she was going to die there. That was the plan from the beginning. And afterwards I was going to get rid of you too. Jessica staggered as if she had been hit. The truth was a hammer destroying her last illusions. Brandon hadn't even loved her. He had just used her. Just like me. Attorney Carrillo resigned right there. Your Honor, I withdraw from the case. I don't represent criminals. He left the room, leaving Jessica alone, crying, destroyed. The officers approached Brandon. Mr. Sandoval, we need you to come with us for a statement. He tried to resist. You can't arrest me. You don't have concrete proof. Mr. Thompson approached with a cold smile. We have more than 20 hours of audio and video recordings, witness testimonies, bank documents showing payments to the doctors. And that is just the beginning. The investigation of Oakwood Haven will reveal much more. Brandon was escorted out of the room, shouting empty threats. Jessica remained alone in her seat, defeated. I approached her slowly. She stood up, seeking my gaze. Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, believe me that I never wanted you to get hurt. I looked at her in silence for a long moment. Then I spoke with a firm voice I didn't recognize as mine. You wanted my money. You were willing to lock me in a madhouse, to steal my house, my life. And now you say you didn't want to hurt me? The damage is already done, Jessica. And there is no going back. I walked out of the courthouse with my head held high. The sun had come out from behind the gray clouds, illuminating the city with a golden light that seemed symbolic. Rebirth, justice, freedom. Mr. Thompson walked beside me, smiling with professional satisfaction. We did it, Margaret. We got them all. Susan was waiting for me on the courthouse steps. She hugged me tight, without words, because none were needed. The following weeks were a whirlwind of investigations and arrests. Dr. Whitman was detained while trying to flee the country. They found evidence in his office of at least 12 other cases where he had falsified diagnoses for money. Families who had trusted him to destroy their loved ones for inheritances. Dr. Sterling surrendered voluntarily, confessing everything in exchange for a reduced sentence. He testified against Whitman, against Jessica, against the whole scheme. Dr. Harris from Street, Jude's resigned and lost his medical license permanently. The investigation of Oakwood Haven was even more chilling. They discovered altered records, suspicious deaths never investigated, families paying extra to accelerate demises. They closed the place down and arrested 3 administrators and 5 doctors. How many lives had been destroyed there? How many elderly people died alone, betrayed by their own blood? Ashley, Brandon's mistress, was arrested as an accomplice. At first she denied everything, but when they showed her the recordings where she plotted alongside Brandon, she crumbled. She confessed they had been having an affair for 2 years, that the plan was always to marry Jessica to access my money. Jessica was formally charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted illegal confinement, and conspiracy to commit murder. Her defense lawyer tried to argue she had been manipulated by Brandon, that she was a victim too. But the recordings showed her as an active and enthusiastic participant. The trial was a media circus. The papers called it the case of the daughter who tried to kill her mother for inheritance. My photo appeared on front pages. They called me brave, cunning, a heroine who had unmasked a web of medical corruption. I didn't feel like a heroine. I felt empty. Brandon received 25 years in prison. Conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, bribery, the longest sentence of all. He shouted my name when they led him away in handcuffs, blaming me for ruining his life, as if I were to blame for his greed. Jessica received 15 years. She could get out earlier with good behavior, but her life was destroyed. Her reputation, her future, all turned to ash by her betrayal. On the day of her sentencing, she looked at me from the defendant's bench. Her eyes sought mine, pleading, desperate. I kept my face neutral. No tears, no forgiveness. When they were leading her away in handcuffs, she yelled one last time, "Mom, please! I'm still your daughter!" I stood up. The room fell silent. Everyone awaited my response. "My daughter died the night she decided to sell me for money. You are just a stranger who shares my last name." Those were the last words I said to her. I didn't attend any more hearings. I didn't answer her letters from prison. For me, Jessica ceased to exist. The following months were about rebuilding. Mr. Thompson helped me reorganize my finances. The properties remained safe in the trust. I decided to sell the condo I rented out and donate the money to an organization that helped elderly victims of family abuse. The house where Jessica lived with Brandon was foreclosed on. Turned out it was mortgaged to the hilt with money they planned to pay back with my inheritance. The bank took it. My own house, the one I almost lost, I filled with new life. Susan moved in with me. 2 widows sharing space, stories, laughs. We turned Jessica's room into an art studio. We painted, read, received visitors. I adopted a dog from a shelter, an old golden retriever nobody wanted because of his age. I named him Buddy, because he would never betray me. December arrived again. A year since that cursed Christmas Eve where my world collapsed. This time, Susan and I decorated the house together. Small tree with white lights, no excess, no pretenses. We invited Mr. Thompson and his wife to dinner. Susan's nephew, Tyler, also came. He had become like a grandson to me. We ate turkey, I prepared myself. We toasted with cheap wine that tasted better than any expensive label. We laughed at silly stories. It was simple. It was real. It was what Christmas was supposed to be. At midnight, when everyone left, I sat alone in the living room with Buddy at my feet. I looked at the lit tree and thought about everything that had happened. I had lost my only daughter. I had discovered that family love can be the cruelest lie. But I had also learned that family isn't just blood. It's loyalty. It's honesty. It's respect. Susan was more my sister than any blood relative. Mr. Thompson had protected me better than any son. This old dog gave me more unconditional love than my own daughter. I smiled. A sad but real smile. My phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Hello." It was Jessica's voice, broken, weeping. "Mom, I know I shouldn't call. I got special permission for Christmas. I just wanted to tell you that." I hung up. I blocked the number. There was no room in my new life for ghosts of the past. Buddy lifted his head, looking at me with those wise eyes old dogs have. I petted him. "We're okay, Buddy. We're okay." And it was true. I had survived. Not just physically, but emotionally. The Margaret who hid in that closet a year ago had died. The one who was born in her place was stronger, wiser, more cautious, but also freer. Free from the guilt of being a bad mother. Free from the obligation to forgive the unforgivable. Free from the chains of toxic love we disguise as family. The newspapers kept calling me for interviews. They wanted to know how I felt. If I had forgiven my daughter. If I would visit her in prison. My answer was always the same. I don't have a daughter. I have a new life. And that is enough. Some people criticized me, said I was cruel, that a mother should always forgive. But those people never heard their own daughter plan their death, never felt the knife of betrayal cut so deep. February brought my 66th birthday. Susan organized a small party. Friends from the neighborhood, people from the yoga club, acquaintances from the supermarket. Real people who liked me for who I was, not for what they could get from me. I blew out the candles on a modest cake. I made a wish. It wasn't to get my daughter back. It was to keep the peace I had found. That night, while getting ready for bed, I found an old letter in my nightstand drawer. My husband had written it before dying. I had read it hundreds of times, but this time, the words resonated differently. "Margaret, my love, if you are reading this, it means I went first. Forgive me for leaving you alone. Take care of our Jessica, but also take care of yourself. Don't lose yourself in loving others more than you love yourself. Kindness is beautiful, but kindness without boundaries is self-destruction. Take care of you." I finally understood. For years I had put Jessica first. Her needs, her desires, her happiness. I had emptied myself trying to fill her, and she had taken everything without thanks, until she wanted to take my very life. Never again. I put the letter back, turned off the light. Buddy snored softly at the foot of the bed. Through the window, the moonlight poured in, and for the first time in decades, I slept without nightmares. Margaret Mendez had survived. More than that, she had won. And this victory, built on ashes of betrayal and baptized in tears of rage, was completely hers. The naive old woman who trusted blindly had died. In her place lived a woman who knew that true love never asks you to destroy yourself, that the family you choose is worth more than the family you get, that surviving sometimes means letting what you love most die. And while the city slept under the cold stars of February, Margaret smiled, because she had won the most important battle, the battle for her own life. And nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever take that away from her again.